Great to have you worshiping with us today. I just want to let you know we'll get to service here in just a minute, but we have online hosts waiting to hear from you in the comments. So be sure and let us know where you're watching from. Answer any questions that might come up in the sermon. If something stands out, be sure and put that in the comments. We want to hear from you. Even if you're watching on the replay, still take part in those comments. And if this is your first time worshiping with us, we are so happy to have you. Be sure and let us know that this is your first time so we can drop a ping pong ball in one of these containers. These containers represent 4 of our mission partners, and each ping pong ball is a $5 donation. That's what we do whenever we have a new guest. So be sure and let us know if this is your first time, or if you're relatively new, maybe you've been coming for a while, but we haven't dropped a ping pong ball in for you yet, be sure and let us know. And now let's head into service.
Man, that guy looks like he's having a pretty rough day. Maybe I should ask if he wants to talk. Or maybe he just wants to be left alone. I just wanted to catch the bus to go home. I don't want to have to talk to anyone. There must be someone else around who can help him. Of course there isn't. Lord, help me. What do you want me to do?
Hey, would you like to talk until the bus gets here?
If you would all stand and join me as we open up with "There's a Wideness in God's Mercy."
There is healing in his blood, for the love of God is water and the measure of our life, and the bottom eternal is most wonderful, holy God.
Runyon. I'm the communications director around here, and I have a big request. I want you all to pull out your phones. You'll see there's new QR codes in front of you. If you're watching online, bear with us for a minute. You can find everything I'm about to talk about at tipcitygmc.org/info. But for those of you here in person, open up your camera and put it over the QR code. You're not actually going to take a picture, just put it over the QR code. You'll see a link pop up. Just click that, and it takes you to that same website, tipcitygmc.org/info. And everything that you need for the week is on that one page. You'll find the sermon notes, the giving link, sign-ups, links for different classes and events. You'll find the here option for attendance. If you're new here, there's an option there for that as well. Everything you need here at this QR code, not just this week, every week. It gets updated every week. So all you got to do when you come in, scan that QR code, have it pulled up, ready to go. Everything you need is right there. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. If you're new here, we want to extend a very special welcome to you. You can scan that QR code and use that, or you can text the word welcome to 937-451-3539. Or if you're here in person, stop out at the welcome desk and meet the wonderful hostesses out there. We would love to get to know you, and this just opens up a line of communication so we can answer any questions that you might have, see if we can be praying for you, and help you figure out if this is the right church for you. We also make a $5 donation to the mission partner of your choice. So be sure and text the word welcome, stop out at the welcome desk, or scan the QR code and let us know that you're here. Now, as far as attendance, you can text here to that same number, or if you're here in person, you can sign the red books in the back. We would just love to know that we are worshiping with you, either here in person or online. Okay, so it is Labor Day weekend, which means it is time for Wednesday night dinners to return. Yes, definitely worth an applause. They start back this coming Wednesday from 5 to 6:30 over in our Great Hall. $5 per person or $15 per family. This first one on Wednesday will be done by the Tip City Seniors, and they will be having their famous chicken and noodles. So you don't want to miss out on that. Be sure and spread the word far and wide. All right, so that just leads to our tithes and offerings time. You'll see a variety of ways that you can give on the screen. Also, remember that give link is right there if you scan that QR code. And I will turn things back over now so we can continue our worship. Enjoy your service.
Thank you, Stephanie. Gosh, aren't we blessed to have her up there? Oh, my God. I'm going to ask you to stand again, if you would. We're going to sing together the song, Lord, Speak to Me. If you want to use a hymnal, page 463. Lord, speak to me that I may see clearly and most of thy throne. As thou hast sought, so let me sing thine every children lost and known. Oh, strengthen me. Thank you, church. Be seated.
Good morning. I didn't get an ovation, but Wednesday night dinner got an ovation. I see what's going on here. But that was great, and the little drama was done by Luke Zirkle. Some of you may know Luke. He was the guy standing up here, and Rick Gilbert was the one. I asked Rick to do that by saying, "You don't have any lines," and he said okay. He did. Today is Labor Day weekend, but it also marks the end of a collection that we've been doing for Wesley Center. Wesley Center down in Dayton has a program where they give baby shower gifts to women who have had children, can't afford the things that they need for the children, and we were able to collect 12 baskets full of all kinds of things, diapers and just other stuff that goes with children, all during the month of August. So I want to thank all of you, anyone who gave to that. I know the kids ministry or the family ministry was involved in that a lot, and so thank you for that. That'll be a great gift that we can offer them. I am in the second week of this sermon series called Witness, and it's a series talking about how to share your faith when you never really have. Many of us hear sermons all of our lives about sharing the gospel, and we never really have done it. So how do we talk about that to a group of people who are used to hearing about sharing their faith but have not done it? I got on the devotional app that is the name of this sermon series through YouVersion this week, and there's a bunch of people on there. And talk back, the reflections that I heard as people were thinking through, what do I do? How do I share my faith? What do I need to do? What do I need to overcome? What are the obstacles? And what would I say? It's amazing. So if you have that YouVersion app, go on and actually look at it. I saw that there was about 30 or so people kind of responding on a normal basis. If you haven't been on it, get on that thing. And I'm on it. I read all of the different statements, and it is fun to listen to. So last week, as we began this series, I talked about Philip and this encounter he had with a stranger, the Ethiopian eunuch. And we kind of looked at the whole episode that ended in baptism. It ended in a baptism of this Ethiopian gentleman. And the story in Acts said this. It said, as they traveled along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, look, here is water. What can stand in the way of me being baptized? It was just evidence that this person just needed someone to enter their life and talk to them about the truth of God in this world. And he was baptized. A pastor that I knew used an illustration that really captured the dynamic that is in play when someone is thinking about sharing their belief in Jesus Christ with other people. And he used this scale, if you have that scale, he used this scale like a positive 10, right on down to 0, and then up to a negative 10. And for instance, when you're sharing the gospel with someone, perhaps you are talking to them and they are kind of negative toward the gospel, and you are kind, you're considerate, and you're sharing the gospel with them, you're sharing your faith in Jesus Christ with them, but they still remain negative. So they're at a negative 10, and your conversation, even though it was great, doesn't seem like it even made a dent in their negativity toward the gospel. I want you to hear these verses, first of all, before I say something about that, from Isaiah 55. These are 2 verses. It says this, as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater. So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Isaiah 55. What the prophet Isaiah is saying, is telling us, is those moments where we feel like our conversation is making no progress in a person's life, that in fact the opposite is actually happening. You are watering when you start talking about what God has done in your life and how He's made changes in your life for the positive. You are watering their soul with joy, with peace, and with biblical love. And they may have been at a negative 10, and they may not have even known it as it was happening, but because they spent time with you hearing that, they might have moved to a negative 9 or a negative 8, something around that. You may not have seen them come to Christ, but and move from 0 to positive 2 or something like that, but they are moving. It's not our concern whether they're at negative 10 or negative 5 or positive 3. That's not our concern. Our concern is that we share what God has done in our life. It's in the case of Philip from this story of last week. Philip was able to help an absolute stranger cross the line of faith from a negative 1 to a positive 1. And he baptized him. Last week in this series on witness, I talked about the life of a witness. But for the rest of this series, I'm going to look at 3 key components. The heart of the witness. Next week then, the friends of the witness. And then finally, the words of the witness. But today we're going to talk about the heart of the witness. And to help me do that, I want to bring in the great theologian Gene Hackman to share with you what the heart of the witness is. Listen to this.
Coach McGinty, what will Washington need to get back into this ballgame?
Heart.
I'm sorry?
You gotta have heart.
Can you elaborate on that?
Miles and miles of heart.
You got to have heart. I thought it was appropriate for the replacements to be part of the deal as football season is starting. Philip, last week, he had heart for seeing people make true change in their life. So the first question that I ask is, do you have heart for seeing people make true and lasting change in their life? It's not a question that I can just assume because you're sitting in the pews today that you think about. Do I really live my life so that I can help see people make true and lasting change in their life? Philip would have remembered moments like we're going to look at this morning. When Jesus, teaching in the temple courts, was put suddenly into a situation where what to do was not exactly clear. But because Jesus had cultivated a pure heart towards people, it led him to do the right thing. Now, we are a church whose tagline is, we are a community church that wants to help people help people. So when we get to that place where we don't know exactly what to do, and we have cultivated a pure heart toward people, it will cause us to say, we want to help them. This is what God would do. Philip would have remembered that day in the temple courts when he witnessed what it looks like for the church to be off mission, to be totally off mission. Here's how it reads in John chapter 8. At dawn, he, meaning Jesus, appeared again at the temple courts, where all the people were gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. Sounds like a typical, normal day. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery, and the law of Moses commands us to stone such women. What do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have basis for accusing him. I want you to stop for a moment and take this moment in. Just place yourself in the temple court. And then all of a sudden this takes place. I often hear people use the reason for not sharing their faith is that they don't know what they would say if something came up, if a situation arose that they didn't know how to handle. So I don't share my faith because I don't know what I would do if something. Does this situation qualify as a moment when I'm not sure what I would do if someone came forward like that? Instantly, Jesus is put on the spot. Think about the eyes of the disciples. All 12 of them are looking at him and thinking, what's he going to do now? How's he going to handle this? Because suddenly this group of Pharisees and teachers suddenly became a tribunal. And they were willing and ready to sacrifice this woman on the altar of Mosaic law. And to further add to the nastiness of the moment, they were using her really to get to Jesus, to try to trip him up. Everyone in the entire event would have felt the wrongness of this moment. But all the accusing fingers were pointing at Jesus. What are you going to say? What are you going to do? Being ready to be open and share your faith can bring about the most extreme attitudes in people. And it can drive us to speak straight from our heart because the attitudes are all out there. And and the only thing that's going to come out of our mouth is what's really on our heart. And if our heart has been saturated with God, it will cause us to move away from just being in the observation deck all of our life about sharing the gospel. Or someone else will do that. But I think I'll just stand here on the observation deck and watch people. In my 12th grade year of high school, I took a speech class. Now, it was kind of weird for me to take a speech class in 12th grade. It was nothing that I would ever think that I would have done. But little did I know that the rest of my life, I would be making a living speaking to people. But I took this speech class, and the assignment was this. We had to give a persuasive speech. And so I decided to give my speech. I had just accepted Christ the summer before. And I decided to give my speech, and it was called How to Accept Jesus Christ as Your Personal Lord and Savior in 12th grade. How the class was set up was you were to give your speech in front of the entire class, but there were 3 people who were going to give, after the speech was over, they were going to give a 1-minute immediate feedback following the speech, and you had to stand there in front of the people, or the whole class, and listen to this feedback as one at a time they gave critique. I gave my speech, and the entire class ran to the chalkboard and gave their lives to Christ. No, not quite. That's not quite how it happened. What did happen was, after the speech, the first person got up and they kind of gave regular feedback. You know, that was okay, good job. The second one was a person, and she was known for having going to church. She was a churchgoer. And she said this was what she said. First of all, the speech, Dan, you gave was okay. But I cannot believe that you chose this subject to speak on. You have just blown your chance to really share Christ in a real way with anyone in this class. This is not the way that the Bible is to be presented in a speech class. And she sat down. The third guy stood up, and he was known as a drug dealer in our school. He was probably taking the class as a requirement to probation or something like that. I thought to myself, here it comes. I am going to get plastered against the wall. He stood up and he said this: I have no idea what was coming out of the mouth of the girl that just spoke. I think what I just heard was the bravest thing I have witnessed in my entire high school years. I have great respect for Dan standing up and speaking about something that he obviously believes. There is something that happens to us when we have spent too much time not sharing our faith with other people. We become analyzers of the way others live or don't live, according to the standards that we have created in our sheltered worlds. I experienced that day in 12th grade. The churchgoer spent her 1 minute critiquing my gall for choosing the subject of Jesus, while the drug dealer spent his 1 minute praising my bravery for choosing the subject of Jesus. The disciples would have witnessed the same thing that day. They would have witnessed the church of that day off mission. And it's a pretty ugly thing to observe. How often this week, if you think back, have you been off mission? Noticing the faults of other people, even to the point of commenting on them. Instead of spending their time soaking up the truth of Jesus that Jesus was teaching on that day, they were busy, these Pharisees and teachers were busy finding fault with a woman caught in adultery, and furthermore trying to use it as a trap to trap Jesus into saying something that they could use later to create even more controversy. Instead, Jesus turned the whole moment into one of the most memorable encounters they had ever seen. It is not about having the right words. It is about having a heart focused on God, and then the words will follow. Here is how the scene unfolded. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Many people have pondered what Jesus wrote on the ground that day, but for me, it's never been my concentration on this story, what he wrote on the ground. Only the fact that he stooped down and he did it. He stooped down and he took a moment. Other places in the gospel tells us that Jesus would often withdraw to lonely places. He would go out to lonely places to pray and to connect with the Father. I believe that is exactly what he was doing in this case. In the midst of all of the accusing voices and noise, Jesus went to a quiet place, and he and his Father reconnected their hearts. An effective witness for the faith has to have a heart that desires to reconnect with the Father, right in the middle of the storms of life and the noise of life. When your heart is at peace with God, you are at peace. You are at peace. And then your mind will follow. It will follow. So first and foremost, when you are thinking about whatever situation you're in, getting your heart at peace, stepping away, bending down, going into the other room, taking a moment and saying, "God, I need to reconnect with you right now because I don't know what to say." Getting your heart right. And in this way, we will agree with the words that Paul wrote when he says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. What the disciples saw in that day in just a few moments was how the faith that they were learning about was going to be best delivered. First, get your heart at peace. Then your mindset will follow. So this is what we're seeing. First, number one, the heart reconnects with God. Once the heart reconnects with God, then everything else flows from that. The second thing is peace then invades your mind. You get your heart set, then peace will invade your mind, and then finally your mindset returns to what Christ would do. But it starts with the heart. So when you are faced with an out-of-control situation, think about your home life. Think about your work life. When you're faced with a sudden out-of-control situation where what you were trying to share was one thing, but it suddenly explodes into another, get your heart right. Because otherwise, when you are faced with this out-of-control situation, a believer, without getting their heart right, will act like every other person on the planet until they reconnect their heart with God. That's why you see rightly people point at Christians and say, look how that Christian's acting. Because that believer has not got their heart set and reconnected with God. And we act like every other person on the planet when we haven't done that. The disciples watched Jesus turn a very volatile situation into the delivery moment for two very important components in sharing our faith. First, they watched him as he offered real help to this woman. Real help. The situation for her was dire. If something didn't happen soon, this woman was done for. And a simple, I will pray for you, wasn't going to cut it here. It wasn't going to work. She needed something real to happen. In that scene in the Bible, Jesus offers this level the playing field kind of statement that sent everybody away. Real help means this. It means that you and I have to be real with people. When our heart is at peace, we become people who are ready to offer real help. So let me ask you a question. This week, how can you offer real help to maybe someone you just met? Maybe you've known them for a short time. How can you offer real help? Think about what they need. How can you offer real help to somebody that you maybe are odds with at work? You're just not seeing eye to eye, and they need help, but you have not been on their team. Or a family member who is maybe out of control, and they need you to step across the line and be in their world for a moment and offer something tangible. Help can not only be risky, but it can be costly. Becoming a believer who lives to meet real needs in a person's life requires us to surrender some of our personal comfort zones. But if the peace of God has invaded your heart, you'll be ready to let go of some of those comfort zones. And when you let go of your own comfort zones on behalf of other people, then you begin to earn the right to be heard. The second thing that the disciples learned that day was wrapped up in what Jesus said after the crowd dispersed. And we discovered that having a heart full of peace and a mindset of Jesus is more than just offering real help. It's also about this second thing. The second thing is replacing judgment with grace and truth. The story says this: Jesus straightened up and asked the woman, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Now, go now and leave your life of sin." Grace in our culture is never equated with judgment. But we live in a culture where judgment and truth are often unable to be recognized by the average person. When someone tells the truth, in our culture, it's often seen as judgment. And so someone has to learn, what are we talking about? How do we replace judgment with grace and truth? Well, replacing it with grace is easy. You just encourage, you just come around them and care for them and encourage them. But what about that truth word? There is a powerful 1-2 punch in Scripture called grace and truth. Jesus led with grace. He said, "Then neither do I condemn you." But he did not withhold truth. Jesus declared, "Now, go now and leave your life of sin." Some of you came here today And you need to hear this morning. You are not condemned. You're not condemned. Now, that area in your life that you are thinking about, well, he doesn't know about that area. That area in your life where you are living apart from God, let it go. It needs to go. It is a ball and chain around you, and you have the strength through Jesus Christ to live beyond it. You're not condemned. Jesus showed the disciples that day that the battle that people fight is an invisible battle of searching for grace and only ever finding condemnation. In order to share our faith in a life-changing way with people, not only do we need to be ready to offer real help to them, which earns us the right to be heard, but we must saturate ourselves in the knowledge that grace and truth has been shown to us, and that is the only thing that we really have to offer other people that is life-changing. I don't stand here today because I took a speech class in 12th grade. I stand here because in God's infinite wisdom and love, He saw fit to change my heart. My heart was not the heart you see standing before you today, before Him. Basically, that day, I heard from Him that I was worth it. And so are you. I was worth His Son going to the cross for me. And so are you. In His eyes, you and I are the most precious thing in all of creation. And when our heart is really able to grasp that news, then we in turn will offer it to someone else. Today, as we come before this table, we are worshiping a God who left His comfort zone of heaven, and He came down to earth to tell us that one thing, that you and I are worth it, and that He would go to the ends of the universe for us. That's grace. Truth is, we have to decide for ourselves whether that's true. As you take the bread and the juice this morning, as memory of the moment when He had His Last Supper with the disciples, let it be a moment. Last week, the most comments that I got were on the statement that I made about extending your moment with people. As you receive the elements today, extend your moments with people. And the first person to extend your moments with is Him, Jesus. Would you bow in prayer and share with me in the Lord's Prayer? Father, hear our words as we prepare our hearts and make our hearts ready to receive this, your meal. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. When he met with the disciples, he took the bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body, which is given for you. Take this and eat it and remember me." For Philip, that would have been to remember everything that Jesus did. To remember me. And after supper, he took the cup. And he blessed it. And he gave this to them. And he said, "Take this and drink this for the forgiveness of your sins." He knew that their hearts were tender and that they would go in all kinds of directions. Take this and drink it for the renewal of your heart every time you receive it. Would those who are serving communion come forward? This table is open to every single person here. And if you're at home right now and you are not here with us and you have your communion elements, if you would prepare them and join with us in this moment. We will ask people to come from the back, just come down and then circle back, and we'll close out the service when everyone has been served. This table is now open for you to come.
right, church. So, following a powerful service like that and moving communion, we have some next steps for you. Lots of them, actually. Be sure and grab a Next Steps catalog. They're out at the Mission and Ministry wall. If you didn't get one last week, you can also find them at tipcitygmc.org/info. Tons of classes are beginning in the next few weeks. Study on Revelation, a study just to learn more about the Global Methodist Church denomination. But we have the Saturday morning men's group that is going to be starting a 4-week study this coming Saturday. The other classes start a little later. This one starts this Saturday. Saturday morning men's group, 7:45, right here in the church. They're going to be doing a study called Fight, and it is by Craig Groeschel. And breakfast is included every Saturday, so you don't want to miss out on that. Also, we want to let you know about an opportunity you have to pack meals for Haiti that will be in partnership with Lifeline. We're actually going down to Westerville to their Lifeline Center to pack the meals. So you can sign up for that, any of these, out at the Mission and Ministry wall, in the catalog, or scan that QR code, visit tipcitygmc.org/info, and you can take your next steps there.
We'll close out the service by singing the last verse of Lord, Speak to Me. If you would stand again, please.
I want to welcome everybody. I'm glad you came today. And as you go out of here, I hope you heard a couple things. One, men, we're going to start that men's breakfast here next Saturday, and I'm going to be there. I hope you'll come. It's just a great time for men to just focus and dig into the Word together. And then, as I understand it, the book of Acts, Ruth Ann Dean is going to be teaching that. Ladies, that is a powerful book, and I hope you will consider it. Go out of here. We need resources if we're going to share the gospel in any kind of effective way. And there's plenty out there to find this fall. So go out of here, have a wonderful Labor Day, and we'll see you soon.